still spend 5 or 6 hours a day reading. I mean, you can learn so much. I particularly love biography.
Reading should not be your priority. Learning should be your priority.
If the president were here, one of his greatest strengths is reading.
Rise and shine, it's espresso time.
I wake up every morning.
Espresso keep me going.
I wake up every morning.
So let's start your day off right together. Grab your coffee and sip on today's message from Warren Buffett. Also, if you want to have more confidence, check out my free 254 Confidence series. The link is in the description below.
It's important to associate with people that are better than yourself. I should mention one thing about reading. It was at the library here at Columbia that I wish I spent probably more time than any other student. I lived there practically. But I pulled the book out there, happened to be Who's in America, and it told me something about my professor, Benjamin Graham, and then I looked up and I went to the library and I said, I want to learn more about this because I learned this over here. That changed my whole life. We own Geico now because of that librarian directing me to some other book and then following through on that. It's the chance. I read about 1/5 the pace that Bill does, but I still spend 5 or 6 hours a day reading. I mean, you can learn so much. I particularly love biography. To be able to live the lives of these people that have been so extraordinary, the lessons and the discouragements they face, just everything about it. So you can't get enough of reading.
Reading should not be your priority. Learning should be your priority. There used to be only a small number of ways to learn. It used to only be reading or maybe going to lectures and learning from people, but reading was one of the fastest ways to learn because you could take somebody's life and in one book condense the whole thing, all of the lessons, and here you go, chance to learn. Now though, there's so many different ways to learn. There's podcasts, there's videos, and so you need to understand what is the best way that you learn. Reading does not have to be in your top priority, but learning has to be. The difference between where you are today and where you will be in 5 years, that growth will be in direct relation to how much you learn, how much you feed this brain right here with knowledge that shifts the way you think, but it doesn't have to come from reading. So looking at my story as an example, I used to read all the time. Growing up, I used to read. I'm 39 now, so I used to read a lot. Growing up, it was the only way to learn. And the idea of being able to look at any famous entrepreneur and look at their story and how they got started, that was a lot of knowledge. That allows you to step into somebody's world, right? If you don't like your environment, you don't like the people around you, you don't want to become your parents or the people in your community, you want something better, you want something bigger, then you need to start to surround yourself with those people. And reading is a great way to step into their world. And so I used to read every single week. Not quite every day, but almost. I was reading a lot. I was voracious. But as soon as video came out, I quickly shifted. I would much rather watch a video than read a book. I just learn better that way. I would much rather have an Elon Musk video and watch him and see him tell his story and look at the body language than I would reading a book about somebody else telling Elon Musk's story. That's me. That's how I learn. I listen to 0 podcasts because auditory is the slowest way for me to learn. If the only way to learn was to listen to podcasts, and I would be all over it and I would force myself to do it because I love learning. But because there's so many different options and I love video first, I default to learning through video like this. Videos like this on my multiple channels. And so video is by far number 1 for me, and I consume video pretty much every single day of my life. Number 2 would be reading, and a huge drop down to number 2. I'll read maybe 3 to 4 books a year. And then number 3 would be auditory, which would be podcasts, and I consume 0 podcasts. I don't know that I've listened to an entire podcast all the way through. It would have to be some person that I can't find the video or a book on, and the only way to get it is to listen to a podcast. So the point of all this is not to slam on podcasts or audiobooks. I have my own audiobook. I read it myself. It's fire. If you love learning from auditory, then you should go and go all in on that. The point is to prioritize learning. You need to have learning as a regular part of your life. If you do not learn consistently, then you will end up in the same spot you are, right? You will be in the same spot you are in 5 years if you do not learn. But it's figuring out where do you learn best and going all in on that strategy. So what's the best way for you to learn? I'm going to give you a 3-step process that I think will help. Step number one is, who do you want to learn from? You want to learn from people who've done more than you have in a certain field or industry, right? If you want to learn to be a better parent, a better husband, a better wife, a better entrepreneur, a better salesperson, a better marketer, who's the person that you want to learn from? And it doesn't mean you have to become that person. The goal isn't to be the next Steve Jobs. It's to learn one thing from Steve Jobs that makes you a better version of you. So who is the person that you most want to learn from right now? Step number 2 is identify, how do you learn best? How do you learn best? I don't care what other people are doing. Do you learn best through videos? Do you learn best through reading? Or do you learn best through auditory, listening to podcasts and audiobooks? How do you learn best? And then number 3 is create a regular learning schedule. If you know who you want to learn from, the types of people, and you know your learning style, then what's your ongoing regular learning schedule? It has to be in your week, every single week. Whether that's a daily thing, whether you make that part of your daily routine, I'm a big fan of that. Otherwise, it's got to be somewhere in your week. You will never learn the material that you want to learn. You will never be able to emulate and model somebody else's success to turn you into the best version of yourself if you don't have that as a part of your regular week, right? Your actions need to map to your ambitions. What's in your calendar has to map to you accomplishing the goals that you want. If you just have goals, if you just want to learn, you want to become that person, but it's not in your schedule anywhere, you're never going to become it. Now I've got a really special bonus clip that I think you're going to enjoy, but before that, question of the day, I want to know, how do you learn best? Is it videos? Is it auditory? Is it reading? Let me know. Put your answer in the comment below.
Read, write, read. If the president were here, one of his greatest strengths is reading. That's one of the reasons why he's a good communicator, why he's such a good writer. He's a voracious reader. So we're trying to get our girls, no matter what, to love reading and to challenge themselves with what they read, not just read the gossip books, but to push themselves beyond and do things that maybe they wouldn't do. So I would encourage you all to read, just keep reading. And writing is another skill. It's practice. The more you write, the better you get. Drafts. Our kids are learning. The first draft means nothing. You're going to do 7, 10 drafts. That's writing. It's not failure. It's not the teacher not liking you because it's all marked up in red. When you get to be a good writer, you mark your own stuff in red, and you rewrite, and you rewrite, and you rewrite. That's what writing is. And if you come out with those skills, and then you're confident, and you can articulate, and you can stand up straight and look anybody in the eye and say, this is who I am, it's a pleasure to meet you. That's one of the things we try to do with our mentoring program with young girls. My message to them is, if you can walk into the White House and meet the First Lady and say, my name is, how are you, and look me in the eye, then there's nothing you can't do. That's why it's important. If you guys walked here, are sitting here in front of all these people, standing tall, asking questions, using your voice, you have to practice that. These arenas just show up again and again, and then you just get used to it. The nerves go away, and you start relaxing into your own abilities. But it's practice.
I read very eclectically, like no book is barred from entering the book list. But then I tend to be extremely impatient about the books I actually read. I would begin like 10 books and drop 9 of them after 10 pages. It's not always the wisest policy, but it's my policy that if a book didn't really teach me something new, had some interesting insight in the first 10 pages, the chances it could be that on page 100, there'll be some mind-blowing ideas that I'm now missing. But there are so many, I keep thinking there are so many wonderful books out there that I will never read. So why waste time on a less optimal book? So I would try like a book on biology, and then economics, and then psychology, and then fiction, and whatever, and just go through them quite quickly until I find something that really grabs me.
Reading is probably the most effective form of learning in existence. And a lot of people want stuff, give me the free advice, but they're not willing to then pursue it, read it, learn it, digest it, that sort of stuff. And in my area of focus, which is direct response marketing, I'm a huge fan of, obviously, the classic books. If you want to learn marketing, read Ogilvy on Advertising by David Ogilvy, one of the greatest marketing books of all time. Read Scientific Advertising and My Life in Advertising by Claude Hopkins, absolute must-reads. Read the Robert Collier Letter book by Robert Collier, phenomenal book.
And if you want Warren Buffett's advice on how to be a success in business, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Defining what your game is, where you're going to have an edge, is enormously important.